to be so for the $1 million question. Before that you're wearing glasses.
Well, I don't want to be dragged, so I'm trying to conceal my identity. But you can ask the question.
Okay. My question is Christianity a patriarchal faith?
I take that back. All right. So the way I want to, because I can sense the bias in the questioning. The bias is loud because this is 21st century, and I know well enough not to just dive into answering any question, just to go
Just tell
headlong.
us yes or no.
I can't give a yes or no answer, but I'll start this way. Christianity as a faith, as you know, some people say it's not a religion, a faith, a relationship, whatever you want to call it, has been the most beneficial, one of the most, in fact, the most, in my opinion, beneficial movements to women, because in a time when women were often subjugated, oppressed, demeaned in society, we had God come in the flesh in the person of Jesus, and you see him relate with women. In fact, putting women on such a high pedestal and status that was countercultural, because the first set of people that saw Jesus at his resurrection were women. I mean, and you need to know how important that detail is, because at the time when these women saw Jesus at his resurrection, the testimony of a woman wasn't really regarded in their community and their society. They didn't admit them. So that's how low and how demeaning it
Women had
was.
been in
Women, yeah,
society.
women had been in society. You have Paul coming on the scene making a statement like, there is no Jew, there's no Gentile, there's no
Yeah.
male, there's
There's
no
no
female. We're
female.
all one in Christ. Thus, accentuating something that Christians believe, that male and female are made equally in God's image. Not that men were made in God's image and women, whatever. Both male and female were made in God's image. And that's why uh, there has always been the drive in Christianity to treat women, that's those who followed the Bible and the New Testament, and to treat women with dignity, because we see women as
Equal to men.
like made in the image. I won't use, because that word equal can be misconstrued, but we see
Okay.
that they were made in the image of God. So now
Okay, so made in the image of God just as men are made in the image of
yes,
God.
so they are deserving of value.
Yeah.
What that means is that the same
Men
value
are not more made in the image of God than
than women,
women.
the same value that you would give to a man,
Yeah.
you also have to treat a woman. The woman is not less of a human being, and that is something that Christianity,
Yeah.
speaks about, and that's why Christianity allowed women to be vocal. Christianity allowed women to speak. Even Paul, in his writings, he commended women. And if you would contrast that with the Islamic faith, I mean, women were not mentioned in the Quran. I'm sorry, I'm chipping
Really?
at there. The
Really?
only woman that was mentioned was Miriam. You can
Oh
check it
wow.
out.
I didn't know that.
Women were not really mentioned in the Quran. The only woman that was mentioned, as I said again, is Miriam, and that's
That's
because
Jesus'
it's
mother.
Jesus' mother. And so you see that compare that with the Bible. Even Jesus alone, we had
Yeah.
those Salome, we had Mary
Mary
Magdalene, we
Magdalene.
had and these women were spoken of in a high regard.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's my first soft landing. Now to
Okay,
get to
that's
the
part
point
one.
of the question, patriarchal. The truth is, you cannot. The foundation of the Christian faith is the Bible, and when you read the Bible is patriarchal, and that shouldn't be a
Mic drop.
problem. It
It
shouldn't be a
shouldn't be a
problem,
problem.
because when you define, you search, just do Google search, without the biases and without the nuances that have been added to the
Yeah.
word patriarchy and patriarchal and all the relating terms, you see that a patriarchal system is just a system and society where men take the leadership. Either a system or a society. By system, we mean families, we mean
Organizations.
organizations where men take the lead. The opposite of that would be a matriarchy or a matriarchal So you are
society
either patriarchal
or
or you are
matriarchal.
matriarchal. So the Bible we see is patriarchal, and the truth is we can make a fair argument that that is by design. Because, when you brought up the subject of equality, and the reason why I said, there's a sense to which men and women are one in Christ. In Christ Jesus, God has accepted us. But we are different, especially physiologically. So Peter makes a statement in one of his writings. He said that we should deal with our wives as co-heirs of the promise and as weaker vessels. When a typical 21st century woman hears that, like, weaker vessels, not interested. But what he's trying to say is something that has been proven beyond reasonable doubt in the 21st century. When he says vessel, it doesn't mean that women are weaker in mind, weaker in spirit. He even says that we are co-heirs. So we receive the same inheritance. When Jesus comes, he's not coming for just the men, he's coming for the women as well. But in body, we are different. Physiologically, as a woman, your body can do things my body cannot do, and my body can do things your body cannot do. On an average, the average man has 20% more body muscle mass than the average woman. It's not a fair competition when we come to physiology.
Yeah.
That's why, to prove it, we have allowed men, so men posing as women, to participate in female sports.
Yeah, and there's been
The result, there was
yeah.
one where the man literally cracked the woman's skull. We are not the same in that regard.
Oh, wow.
He cracked her skull. Like in the it's not a fair. It's not a fair. They put a man to run in a women's. He dusted everybody, and that man, when you put him amongst other men, he won't. He won't. But he beat all the women in the race. So the thing is, there's a reason why God made it so. I believe that with God saying that the man should be the head of the home, he has put in every man the ability to lead. But how men over the years have dealt with that ability, used that ability, is why patriarchy is now
became a problem.
a trigger word. So now, you see men who have abused that power, because that level of power, that level of difference, that level of ability is a trust that God has given us as men.
To be able to
you are
do
strong, that
something
you're able to
with
do
it.
something constructive with it. But because of sin, and that's why I believe sin is the problem. Patriarchy is not the problem. Sin is the problem. Men have perverted that power, subjugated women, treated them like less. But even the Christian faith has a solution to that. And what is the solution? We have a perfect example in God becoming a man to show us who a man should look like.
Hey.
So we see Jesus Christ being the perfect example of it, what a man should be like. So when most men in our when most men in our society now are self-indulgent, everything that disgusts women, self-indulgent, not willing to sacrifice, not willing to budge, just willing to subjugate and oppress, and powerful.
I'm the man of the house.
You see Jesus coming on the scene, dying for us, being a lowly servant, serving people. You see that example. So in Christianity, we see that if every man emulates Christ as the Bible asks us to we won't have a problem with the fact that the Bible is patriarchal. And as I said, if you look at the Bible, you can't run away from the patriarchy in the Bible. God, we had the conversation. You can't run away from
people are
it.
going to have a problem.
You can't run away from it. God is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob up until today. Those are patriarchs. Then Jacob had 12 sons. Those sons are the patriarchs of Israel. And Israel is where we now have all the men that now trickle down to Jesus Christ. When God decided to come, he came as a man.
Yeah.
When he would pick his apostles, he had female disciples, but he picked 12 men who are the apostles of Christ. So we see men taking the lead, although I don't excuse the excesses, and if it does any good, before I'm dragged, I apologize on behalf of every man who has been nasty, who has abused the right of the patriarchy, and who has manipulated and subjugated the women around them, and so much so that women now see that system as an oppressive one. Once you just see the patriarchy, it's oppression. But as I pointed out, we have churches that are led by men. That's patriarchal in a sense. And many people are comfortable under this.
Yeah,
Our
like,
church is
our
an
church is
example
there
of
too,
that.
and they are
I
fine
had to
with
point
it.
that out to you
Yeah,
when we started
that was
it,
actually
that
spoiler. Like,
if
when you first said
patriarchy
the
means
patriarchal, I was like,
a system and society led by men, I mean,
yeah,
this is a system. This
yeah,
church is a system, for
yeah,
example. We are glad with our pastor. We
yeah,
like our pastor. If
yeah,
it was a woman, I'm sure the woman would do an amazing job because that's what Christianity
yeah,
strives for.
yeah,
Both men and women can be called to do the work of ministry.
yeah.
But here in this case, we have a man.
We have a lead
And we
pastor
are
as a
not
man.
in
Yeah.
any way disadvantaged because patriarchy is a man, it must be a woman. No.
That was an excellent example
we are
because all my defense is just like, oh, okay,
we are
patriarchy may not
so
be the problem.
the problem is sin,
Yeah,
not
as per usual.
not patriarchy. If more men decided to come, because it's a high horse, it's pride. You know, when a man sees all his abilities, it tends to pride.
Yeah,
Come off your high horse. Be more like Jesus. Jesus didn't count equality with God as
that's
something to be,
held on to.
but he came down to serve us.
That's so
If
good.
every man can toe that line, when you hear
Yeah,
patriarchy,
because I've never had a problem with Jesus.
you will welcome it. You'll be
Yeah,
like,
I've never had a problem with
if
Jesus.
if every man was like Jesus, you will love the patriarchy. You will embrace it. You will wish that more men take it. Because the truth is, as I said, the way we are fashioned is the way God designed it. For every system to be orderly, there must be leadership.
Yeah,
And the way God has ordered, the basic unit of every society is family.
yeah.
The way God has ordered it is that
The
men take
basic head of that
that is
unit is
why
a man.
when the devil wants to destroy a community or society, he distracts the men or eliminates them. Adam was not there when snake was lying to his wife. And the woman, in her own right, she was supposed to submit to his authority. God gave the man the instruction. He didn't give Eve. It was his duty to make sure that his wife was guarded at every time. And it was this thing. But she listened to the serpent. The question was, where was Adam?
And when they gave him the fruit too, why did he accept
He
it?
ate it. Well, that's what got
Were
us
you
to
not
this.
supposed to
That's
say,
why we're
God
even
said we
having
should
this
not eat
conversation.
it?
This thing. So we see over time that in our day and age, I feel what he's doing with the men is this, he's emasculating them. Men are now more
Yeah.
effeminate.
Yeah.
Men don't want to stand up.
Yeah.
So because masculinity is now seen as a negative
I'm
thing.
sorry that I'm laughing so much. This
It's
is
not-
actually
it's
funny.
the truth. It's the truth. You see men wearing waist bead now. Men are now acting more like women. Sorry, I'm going here. It's very, but in the transgenderism movement, we have more men who want to become women. Even though women will shout from now to tomorrow, and I believe a woman's life is hard.
Yeah.
You go through a lot of biological changes. But you see men saying, you know what, I'm tired of this man thing. Only us, men has come. Men are useless. Men are trash. I want to be a woman. Let people love me. Let people accept me. So you see more cases of men
Yeah,
actually identifying.
yeah.
I want to be a woman.
Yeah.
I want to enjoy all this
It's now
attention.
tough for men out there. It's now tough. They're actually
there's
always dragging
So
you guys.
more men are now like, you know what? The patriarchy is evil. Being a man is evil. Why am I a man? And how it's not benefiting women is that, do you know it's an insult to women that men are identifying as women?
Why?
Because what you people do is so unique. Imagine a guy with
Yes.
muscles, big chest, beard saying, I'm a woman. You have never had a menstrual cycle before. You don't know what ovulation
Echo
feels
it
like.
for us, please.
You cannot get pregnant. Then when they ask you, what are you? You say, I'm a woman, with your bass voice. It's insulting. Like, you can't do all these things. A woman can try her best to act like a man. But a man, no matter how hard you try, you know if he born. You know if he born. No matter how a woman can, you know what, lift the weight and try and compete with a man.
Yes.
But no matter how hard you try, and
don't have a uterus.
that's the uniqueness that the society is trying to suppress.
Yeah.
So now when you hear women talk about childbirth, it's treated like anathema.
Yeah.
When you talk about this thing,
don't refer to women as don't say mother, say birth giver.
Birth giver. This thing. But this is what makes you unique. Men cannot do it. No matter how much you identify. If you like change your sex organs, you cannot. God has done it that way.
Yeah.
You cannot.
Science has not reached that
You
level.
cannot. And we are privileged that uniqueness of women was utilized in the salvation plan. Because Jesus didn't need a father, but he needed a mother.
Yeah.
So you see that there's the Christian faith just equalizes it.
Yeah.
So to summarize everything, we have a perfect example of masculinity in Jesus Christ. If every man was like Jesus Christ, you won't have an issue with the patriarchy or the fact that
Yeah.
the Bible is
No, real. Jesus is
patriarchal.
gentle,
Gentle, kind,
serves. Like
serves.
there's, you like if you read the Bible, you won't have an issue with Jesus.
Exactly. Then, in the same vein, the Bible and Christian faith elevates the status of women, and many women don't realize it because we just want to see misogyny in everything.
Yeah.
So I've heard women say Paul is misogynistic. You
Yeah.
don't realize how opposites it's for
I think
Paul to make.
now that you said it, where people would probably have a problem is where he said women should not speak in church. So since we've already come to the bridge, let's just cross it. Where he talks about women shouldn't speak in the church.
And all of
Women, so
that is still
speak to that.
contextual. When he says women should not speak in the church, it was contextual to a church. He was trying to. What was the first of all? I think that should be in 1 Corinthians 14. The whole gist of that chapter is order in the church. If you make a firm argument, it's not only the women he was telling to not speak, because now he says you people are just coming and speaking in tongues anyhow, acting disorderly. He said he now sets order. Let them speak in threes. So what was happening then was, and that will even make you know how deep the problem was. Before then, in the Jewish synagogues, there were barriers in the Jewish synagogue. In fact, the reason why Paul was arrested when he went to Jerusalem is because he let a Gentile man. They lied against him, but he let a Gentile man into the synagogue. There were signboards in those days in
That didn't
synagogues
allow
that
Gentiles.
if a Gentile enters the synagogue, whatever happens to him, he brought it upon himself, just like cars parked at Ona's risk.
Okay.
So if you bring a Gentile and they stone him, he brought it upon himself. So even the
was
Roman
a
government
risk.
sanctioned that. So Paul was accused for bringing a Gentile. So in Ephesians 2, when he says that he has broken down the middle wall of Patriarchal, he was speaking figuratively, but he was speaking of something they could all relate to.
Yeah.
As a Gentile audience, you could not enter the Jewish synagogue. You know who
So that's
else?
why it must have been very revolutionary for them.
Yes, you know who else could not step into the place reserved for
Women.
Jewish men?
Women. Of course.
But now you have a church where men and women are speaking separately. At a time where the women could not talk in synagogue, where they had their own separate room,
Yes.
you now have women. We have the right now.
Yeah.
You are talking during the
Okay.
service. You are disrupting service.
Valid, because they had been locked out of service for a long time.
So when he says this in Timothy, in another place, he said, let them ask their husbands at home. So you see now that he's bringing it to the context. Now he's married women. So you're in church. You are shouting in church, asking your husband there, because now you have freedom. Christianity has given you that freedom.
Yes.
You're asking your husband in church, what is the pastor saying? You are disrupting the service. A service that's supposed to be orderly. The point was orderliness and not subjugation. Let's be orderly.
So women
if you
are
have a
allowed
question, ask your husband at home. Don't disrupt this thing that is happening. But as to whether women did ministry,
That's not even, if you open scripture, I don't think that should be up for debate.
Apollos and Aquila.
Yes.
Sorry,
Priscilla and Aquila. Yeah.
Women did ministry.
Yeah.
In Romans, I think 15 or 16, where Paul is giving salutations, he calls notable women. He salutes many women. In fact, there's one that he calls an apostle. I think Junior. And even says that she was an apostle before him.
Oh, wow.
That was a woman. So he applauds many women. So women played pivotal. In fact, you can't do ministry without women. Jesus didn't do ministry without
women.
He said there were some women that followed him and they met his needs. They gave towards his ministry. So women are very important to this thing. There's where the early church met to pray for Peter's release was John Mark's mother's house. So women, Christianity is open. Women, we welcome the work of.
It's a faith that
very inclusive.
That is very inclusive.
It
You
doesn't
cannot
set-
deny the fact that there has been patriarchal.
Yes.
What's the word?
And
now?
even
Basis.
within Christianity, some people have used the same text to suppress women.
Yes.
Also, we have things like, women should not preach.
Yes.
Women are not this. Women are not that. That is still sin. Men are using the thing that is supposed to be
Yes.
freeing to still further
They're using their
suppress.
authority to suppress what God has given to people for free.
So, as
The
I
problem
said,
is sin, in summary.
if every man was like Jesus, patriarchy would not be an offensive word. If every man acted like Jesus.
Put that on a t-shirt,
But
because I agree.
sadly, because sin has ravaged humanity, even men with good intentions still find themselves doing things that they shouldn't do.
Yeah.
Sin is the problem.
Sin is the
Because
problem. Men
I
are not
mean,
the problem. Sin is
they
the
have
problem.
been matriarchies.
Could you say
As
that men are not the problem, sin is the problem, or sinful men are the problem?
sinful men are the problem, men controlled by sin, because there have been matriarchies. Best believe we always act as if it
Yeah.
has been patriarchies throughout, but there have been societies led by women, and I won't say the outcomes have been what we would expect, that if you give it to women, it will be better off.
Yeah.
In some
Because
cases,
it's,
well,
excuse me, it's
so
not that men or women are better. It's that people sin. If you hand
people are
something to
just.
people with
There
sin,
was
there
a
will always be a
queen. There
problem.
was a queen. If you read churches, there was a queen that was nicknamed Bloody Mary. Bloody Mary. Where did that name come from? She was bloody.
Used to kill people.
Yes, Bloody Mary killed people. So she got the nickname Bloody Mary. That's a matriarch. That's a matriarch. So at both sides of the divide, we see that people abuse power, and that's sin's problem. So it's not that if we say, oh, let's make it a matriarchy, that's not the solution.
Be
Let's
saved.
let's
Receive
let's
Jesus.
introduce people to Jesus,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
men.
Yeah.
We need more men to look like Jesus Christ. That's the perfect example.
Yeah.
If more men are like Jesus, I will keep repeating it. Patriarchy
Will not be a
would not be an
problem.
offensive
Yeah.
word. It won't
And
be
I
something
think
that you have a problem with.
I love your responses. I think that one of the stories that really shows me the heart of Jesus towards women is the story of the adulterous woman.
Exactly.
I think like this was a society. They were ready to stone her. They were ready to kill her. And Jesus was a teacher, a renowned teacher in their day. He could have been like, yes, uphold the law, stone her. But he was like, the first one, the one of you, which one of you does
So I
not
have
have
seen.
sin?
Cast
Cast
the
the
first
first stone. Like in that moment, and then he looks at her and tells her, woman, go and sin no more.
I
And then we
don't.
see this same woman, I don't know if she's the same person, but like it's speculated that she follows him in his ministry. I mean,
Most
rightly
of the
so.
women who he did followed
Followed him. I
became
mean, me too, I'll
followers.
follow you because they were ready
Became
to kill
followers.
me,
So
and
we
you
have
really
Mary.
stepped in
We
and
have
saved my
Mary
life.
who he cast out 7 demons from, becoming one of his
Exactly, I think that's the person I'm referring to.
like hardest
Central.
hardcore. So much so that I think she was there at the tomb when he was this thing. So that was how
Yeah.
Jesus was to women.
Love your responses. So, the point of this is that many of us have questions, right? We have misconceptions about the Christian faith, and you argue. We Christians, we insist that Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life because He said it Himself. But there are many convictions, there are many gaps in the convictions that you may have, and this is why I'm inviting you for that conference, where we'll be answering the questions that you have. We'll be helping the seekers find and helping the found seek. Going to be holding in this June. You see all details on the screen. Please don't miss it. Invite somebody that you know to be there. Have an amazing day and love you. Bye.